Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Lloyd's ASMR. For tonight's episode, I have a new series I'm testing out. I first started it on Patreon, but I want to see where it best fits. It's a series about true crime, mainly missing persons at this point, but we might dive deeper into certain things. So, let me know what you think in the comments below. Is it best fit for here on YouTube, or would it be better for Patreon? I'll let that all up to you. So, the first case we have is a case that some of you may remember. Maura Murray was born on May 4th, 1982, in Brockton, Massachusetts, and was the youngest daughter of Fred and Lori Murray. Maura grew up in Hanson, a small suburb on the South Shore of Massachusetts, in a working-class family with plenty of guidance from her siblings, including her older brother, Fred Jr., sisters Kathleen and Julie, and younger brother Curtis. Her parents divorced when she was 6. Maura was an overachiever that excelled both academically and athletically. At the same time, she was active in her local community, where she became known for her kind heart, signature dimples, and beautiful smile. She participated in nearly every sport, including competitive AAU basketball, which allowed her to travel all over New England as a teenager. A fierce competitor, she consistently finished in the top tier of runners in the state of Massachusetts and broke several long-standing school records. Selected as a Boston Globe All-Scholastic in cross-country, Maura qualified for the U.S. National Scholastic Outdoor Championships in the 2-mile as a sophomore in 1998, finishing 33rd in the country. She graduated at the top of her class at Whitman-Hanson Regional High School and had her pick of colleges, both academically and athletically. However, she decided to accept a congressional nomination from the late Senator Edward Kennedy and join her sister Julie at the prestigious United States Military Academy at West Point. Maura continued to excel in the rigorous military and academic program at West Point and established herself as a force on the cross-country and track teams. During her second year at West Point. Maura decided the military was not for her, and she transferred to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, where she decided to pursue a career in nursing. On the morning of February 9th, 2004, Maura submitted her nursing homework electronically and reportedly emailed professors stating there had been a death in the family, and she would leave campus for the week. There was no death in the family. She placed a call to the owner of a condominium in Bartlett, New Hampshire, which is a place that was special to Maura, and that she had spent time there in the past. She packed a bag with toiletries, makeup, workout attire, school books, and several days' worth of clothing. Now, before we get into this any further, let's take a look at who we're talking about here. So, this here is a photo of Maura Murray. Here is a, reconstructed photograph, or a rendition of Maura Murray. So, at 3:15 p.m., Maura stopped at an off-campus ATM and withdrew $280, which was nearly all of the money in her account. So she cleaned it out completely, or at least someone did. Get this. She then stopped at a liquor store and purchased about $40 worth of alcohol. According to authorities, she departed the Amherst, Hadley, Massachusetts area around 4:30 p.m. and drove her 1996 Saturn north towards New Hampshire. She did not tell anyone what her plans were or why she was heading to New Hampshire on that Monday afternoon. Now, at 7:27 p.m., Faith Westman, a resident of Haverhill, New Hampshire, called police and stated that there had been an accident near her home and that a car was stuck in a ditch. Shortly after, a bus driver named Butch Atwood drove by and spoke to Maura. He offered her help and asked if she needed him to call police. She declined both offers and said she had already called AAA. Knowing there was no call reception in that area, Atwood drove home, about 100 yards east of the accident, parked his bus, and went inside to call police. His call to 911 was placed at 7:42 p.m. When asked if she appeared injured, Atwood told police that she appeared shaken up and that the airbags had deployed. But he saw no blood. By the time the first officer arrived on scene at 7:46 p.m., Maura was gone. The officer noted that the car had been locked and there was a box of red wine behind the driver's seat, as well as stains on the ceiling and door, and a Coke bottle that appeared to have a red liquid in it. He also noted that there appeared to be a rag stuffed in Maura's tailpipe. Later it was learned that this was something Fred had advised Maura to do in order to avoid being ticketed by police for excessive smoke coming from the tailpipe. The officer asked the bus driver for assistance locating Maura and suggested he drive west of the accident scene and search some of the roads in the French Pond area. A state trooper also responded to the scene and also searched the roads west of the accident. Fire and EMS also responded to the scene. EMS was dismissed within minutes, perhaps because there was no one at the scene to treat. The 8 firefighters briefly searched in the accident scene before proceeding back west and returning to the fire station. As far as anyone is aware, no one searched east of the accident scene. The bus driver's brief interaction with Maura was the last known sighting. Since that time, there has been no trace of her and no activity on her cell phone or bank accounts. Here is the missing persons flyer for Maura Murray. And I'm going to leave this up here for you to pause at your own convenience. And if you know anything, please call the appropriate authorities. So the date of last contact was February 9th, 2004. Last seen location, Haverhill, New Hampshire. Caucasian, female, 5'7" approximately 120 to 125 pounds, green-blue eyes, light brown hair. Her age at disappearance was 21 years of age. Some distinguishing features: dimples on both cheeks, as well as some fillings and crowns present in her teeth. So, let's see here. On Monday, February 9th, 2004, at approximately 7:30 p.m., a black black-colored Saturn four-door sedan vehicle belonging to 21-year-old Maura Murray traveled off Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, and became stuck. The roads in that area of northern New Hampshire were snow-covered at the time. Murray was not present at the crash scene when police arrived and has not been seen or heard from since. Murray was last seen on surveillance footage early in the day at an ATM wearing a dark jacket and jeans. Prior to that, Murray had left the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where she was studying nursing. Murray did not share with others her pending trip to New Hampshire, which was about 2.5 hours away. Murray received prior education at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, was an avid runner, and enjoyed hiking in the White Mountains. So, again, if you know anything, call the appropriate authorities. The next case that I have for you all, the Sodder children. A tragic Christmas mystery remains unsolved more than 60 years after the disappearance of 5 young siblings. Now, before we get into this case, these are the Sodder children. We have Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty. I'll let this up here so you can pause it and read it. For nearly 4 decades, anyone driving down Route 16 near Fayetteville, West Virginia, could see a billboard bearing the grainy images of 5 children, all dark-haired and solemn-eyed. Their names and ages: Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5. Stenciled beneath, along with speculation about what happened to them. Fayetteville was and is a small town, with a main street that doesn't run longer than 100 yards, and rumors always played a larger role in the case than evidence. No one even agreed on whether the children were dead or alive. What everyone knew for certain was this: on the night before Christmas, 1945, George and Jenny Sodder and 9 of their 10 children went to sleep. One son was away in the army. Around 1 a.m., a fire broke out. George and Jenny and 4 of their children escaped, but the other 5 were never seen again. George had tried to save them, breaking a window to re-enter the house, slicing a swath of skin from his arm. He could see nothing through the smoke and fire. which had swept through all of the downstairs rooms, living and dining room, kitchen, office, and his and Jenny's bedroom. He took frantic stock of what he knew. 2-year-old Sylvia, whose crib was in their bedroom, was safe outside, as was 17-year-old Marion and 2 sons, 23-year-old John and 16-year-old George Jr., who had fled the upstairs bedroom that they shared, singeing their hair on the way out. He figured Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty still had to be up there, cowering in 2 bedrooms on either end of the hallway, separated by a staircase that was now engulfed in flames. He raced back outside, hoping to reach them through the upstairs window. But the ladder he always kept propped against the house was strangely missing. An idea struck. He would drive one of his 2 coal trucks up to the house and climb atop it to reach the windows. But even though they'd functioned perfectly the day before, neither one of them started. He ransacked his mind for another option. He tried to scoop water from a rain barrel, but found it frozen solid. 5 of his children were stuck somewhere inside those great whipping ropes of smoke. He didn't even notice that his arm was slick with blood, that his voice hurt from screaming their names. His daughter Marion sprinted to a neighbor's home to call the Fayetteville Fire Department, but couldn't get any operator's response. A neighbor who saw the blaze made a call from a nearby tavern, but again, no operator responded. Exasperated, the neighbor drove into town and tracked down Fire Chief F.J. Morris, who initiated Fayetteville's version of a fire alarm, a phone tree system, where one firefighter phoned another, who phoned another, and so on and so forth. The fire department was only 2.5 miles away, but the crew didn't arrive until 8 a.m., by which point the Sodders' home had been reduced to a smoking pile of ash. George and Jeannie assumed that their 5 children were dead. But a brief search of the grounds on Christmas Day turned up no trace of remains. Chief Morris suggested that the blaze had been hot enough to completely cremate the bodies. A state police inspector combed through the rubble and attributed the fire to faulty wiring. George covered the basement with 5 feet of dirt, intending to preserve the site as a memorial. The coroner's office issued 5 death certificates just before the new year, attributing the causes to fire or suffocation. the Sodders had begun to wonder if their children were still alive. The Sodders planted flowers across the space where their home once stood and began to stitch together a series of odd moments leading up to the fire. There was a stranger who appeared at the home a few months earlier, back in the fall, asking about hauling work. He meandered to the back of the house, pointed to two separate fuse boxes and said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." Strange, George thought, especially since he had just had the wiring checked by the local power company, which pronounced it in fine condition. Around the same time, another man tried to sell the family life insurance and became irate when George declined. To George, "Your blankety-blank house is going up in smoke," he warned, "and your children are going to be destroyed. You are going to be paid for the dirty remarks you have been making about Mussolini." George was indeed outspoken about his dislike for the Italian dictator, occasionally engaging in heated arguments with other members of Fayetteville's Italian community. And at the time, didn't take the man's threats seriously. The older Sodder sons also recalled something peculiar. Just before Christmas, they noticed a man parked along U.S. Highway 21, intently watching the younger kids as they came home from school. Around 12:30 Christmas morning, after the children had opened a few presents and everyone had gone to sleep, the shrill ring of the telephone broke the quiet. Jenny rushed to answer it. An unfamiliar female voice asked for an unfamiliar name. There was raucous laughter and glasses clinking in the background. Jenny said, "You have the wrong number," and hung up. Tiptoeing back to bed, she noticed that all the downstairs lights were still on and the curtains open. The front door was unlocked. She saw Marion asleep on the sofa in the living room and assumed that the other kids were upstairs in bed. She turned out the lights, closed the curtains, locked the door, and returned to her room. She had just begun to doze when she heard one sharp, loud bang on the roof, and then a rolling noise. An hour later, she was roused once again, this time by heavy smoke curling into her room. Jenny couldn't understand how 5 children could perish in a fire and leave no bones, no flesh, nothing. She conducted a private experiment, burning animal bones, chicken bones, beef joints, pork chop bones, to see if the fire consumed them. Each time she was left with a heap of charred bones. She knew that remnants of various household appliances had been found in the burn 2,000 degrees. Their house was destroyed in 45 minutes. The collection of odd moments grew. A telephone repairman told the Sodders that their lines appeared to have been cut, not burned, cut. They realized that if the fire had been electrical, the result of faulty wiring, as the official reported stated, then the power would have been dead. So how to explain the lighted downstairs rooms? A witness came forward, claiming he saw a man at the first scene taking a block and tackle used for removing car engines. Could he be the reason George's trucks refused to start? One day, while the family was visiting the site, Sylvia found a hard rubber object in the yard. Jenny recalled hearing the hard thud on the roof, as well as the rolling sound. George concluded it was a napalm, a pineapple bomb, of the type used in warfare. For the next few years, the tips and leads continued to come. George saw a newspaper photo of school children in New York City and was convinced that one of them was his daughter Betty. He drove to Manhattan in search of the child, but her parents refused to speak to him. In August 1949, the Sodders decided to mount a new search at the fire scene and brought in a Washington, D.C. pathologist named Oscar Hunter. The excavation was thorough, uncovering several small objects, damaged coins, a partly burned dictionary, and several shards of vertebrae. Hunter sent the bones to the Smithsonian Institute, which issued the following report. The human bones consist of 4 lumbar vertebrae belonging to one individual. Since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been around 16 or 17 years of age. The top limit of age should be about 22, since the centra, which normally fuse at 23, are still unfused. On this basis, the bones show greater skeletal maturation than one would expect for a 14-year-old boy. It is, however, possible, although not probable, for a boy 14 and a half years old to show 16 to 17 maturation. The vertebrae showed no evidence that they had been exposed to fire. The report said, and it is very strange that no other bones were found in the allegedly careful evacuation of the basement of the house, noting that the house reportedly burned for only about a half hour or so. It said that one would expect to find the full skeletons of the 5 children, rather than only 4 vertebrae. The bones, the report concluded, were most likely in the supply supply of dirt George used to fill in the basement to create the memorial for his children. So that's kind of strange, right? So the only bones they find are bones that are accidentally placed there. But it got close. It got real close. 16 to 17-year-old boy, they had one. So it's a crazy case. In 1968, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny went to get the mail and found an envelope addressed only to her. It was postmarked in Kentucky, but had no return address. Inside was a photo of a man in his mid-20s. On its flip side, a cryptic, handwritten note read, Louis Sodder. I love Brother Frankie. Something boys A90132 or 35. She and George couldn't deny the resemblance to their Louis, who was 9 years old at the time of the fire. Beyond the obvious similarities, dark curly hair, dark brown eyes, they had the same straight, strong nose, the same upward tilt of the left eyebrow. Once again, they hired a private detective and sent him to Kentucky. They never heard from him again. The Sodders feared that if they published the letter or the name of the town on the postmark, they might harm their son. Instead, they amended the billboard to include the updated image of Louise and hung an enlarged version over the fireplace. Time is running out for us, George said in an interview. But we only want to know if they did die in the fire. We want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them. He died a year later, in 1968, still hoping for a break in the case. Jenny erected a fence around her property and began adding rooms to her home, building layer after layer in the outside. Since the fire, she had worn black exclusively as a sign of mourning, and continued to do so until her own death in 1989. The billboard finally came down. Her children and grandchildren continued the investigation and came up with theories of their own. The local mafia had tried to recruit him, and he declined. They tried to extort money from him, and he refused. The children were kidnapped by somebody they knew. Someone who burst into the unlocked front door, told them about the fire, offered them take them someplace safe. They might not have survived the night. If they had, and if they lived for decades, if it really was Louis in that photograph, they failed to contact their parents only because they wanted to protect them. The youngest and last surviving Sodder child, Sylvia, is now 69 and doesn't believe her siblings perished in the fire. When time permits, she visits crime-sleuthing websites and engages with people still interested in her family's mystery. Her very first memories are of that night in 1945, when she was 2 years old. She will never forget the sight of her father bleeding or the terrible symphony of everyone's screams. And she is no closer now to understanding why and what happened that Christmas night. Now, I've got a side-by-side comparison of assumed Louis Sodder and little Louis Sodder, just for you all to see if you can match anything up. I mean, yeah, you got the eyebrows. Even the shape of the chin, the mouth, and it's possible. That is all I have for tonight. I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and if you would like to see more true crime on the channel, let me know in the comments below. Well, until next time, this is Lloyd's ASMR, signing